Hey, this is Lloyd Alvarez for another tutorial for aetuts.com. What I'm going to show you guys today is how I created this piece. Okay, so something like this would probably usually take a long time, very tedious to actually enter and manipulate all of this text, and then to break up this logo into this many pieces would be an extremely tedious and laborious process. What I aim to show you guys today is by using scripts and expressions, we can actually make this really sort of complicated animation quite easily and simply. It's it's a fairly advanced sort of way of working, but I think once you get comfortable with it, it will really take your work to another level. So let me tell you about the process. First of all, the original cinematic open that I did was very popular, and the way I knew that is because of the wonderful comments that all you guys leave on the site. They're not all wonderful. If anything, that's one thing I like about it, is they're all very honest, and I thought it'd be great to sort of encapsulate that spirit of community that we have here with the with all the feedback into this piece. And so essentially what I did is and the other thing is I found this piece of music on Audio Jungle, and I don't know, it reminded me of a John Williams sort of a E.T. kind of a vibe, so I decided to go with the space theme. I found this really cool image on the NASA website, and I'll provide links to all that stuff. And so yeah, so that was kind of the process behind how I came up with all of this. So how did I get, let's start with the text. How did I get all this text in? Well, the first thing I did is I went and I started with the original cinematic open, and I literally just went and grabbed sort of all the comments like this and just went all the way to the bottom and just shift selected and then just copy. And then you're going to need a word editing program that supports regular expressions. For Windows, there's one called Notepad here. You want to look for this sort of regular expressions. On the Mac, which is what I'm using, there's this one called Text Wrangler. So let's go ahead into Text Wrangler and create a new document. And I'm just going to paste this stuff. And Text Wrangler has this neat little feature, allows you to show invisibles, and Word has something like this as well. Essentially lets you see, like in this case, tabs and returns. And the very easy way to do this is to just grab the tabs and the returns, because basically what I want to do is I want to take the well, let's look at it here. So this is the name of the reader who left a comment with the date, and then this is the actual comment. So I want to get rid of this gap. So I just go like this, copy, and then I do Apple F to find, and then I just paste that stuff in, and then I replace it with space dash space, and then just do a replace all. And you can see that it just immediately got rid of all those extra gaps. Some of these two-liners you actually kind of have to go in and take out by hand, but there's not that many of them, so you could do it easily. But I also wanted to get rid of the date, so I'm going to undo this. I wrote a little regular expression, and you could write a whole PhD thesis on using regular expressions. But essentially what I did is I wanted to detect two numbers followed by two alphabetical characters. And the way you do that is \D says you're looking for a number, and then the little plus means sequential numbers. And the reason I do that is because it'll also detect one number or three numbers. And then this is how you indicate it's looking for any lowercase alphabetical letter per se. And then this way you say you want it to be two of them. And you need to click this little use grep. That means that you wanted to not find these exact characters, but actually interpret this as a regular expression. This is kind of advanced stuff. I wouldn't worry too much about this, but in case some of you more technically oriented users want to learn that. Now, there's lots of information on regular expressions on the net. Just search regular expressions. Anyway, so if you do find, you can see here it detected that. Once I know that that's working, I can just do a replace all. And, undo. I actually want to, replace it with nothing. So just delete this and hit nothing. And I want to start at the top so it does all of them, and I replace all. So there you go. It just got rid of all of the numbers. And then because there's only been 2 months, December and January, this part is easy. I can just do December and then include the space afterwards. So I just hit a space, and again with nothing, and replace all. And then down here there's some Januaries. Yeah, so just do the same with January, space, and replace all. Okay, so now that I've gotten rid of the dates, I can go ahead and do this again. So copy, and then paste that, and then space dash space, so replace all. So as you can see here, now that replaced all. And I also want to get rid of these tabs at the beginning, so just copy this, and then paste that on top, and then replace that with nothing, and replace all. So there you go. So that tidied it all up, and now I can get rid of this first little thing. So as you can see, each comment is separated by 2 returns. Actually, it's 3 because it's 1, 2, and then this would be the third one up here. So what I do here is I just save as, and say I'll save it as comments. I've already saved it, so I'm not going to save it again. But the reason to keep this in mind is we're going to use the script to actually enter all the text, and the script needs to know how to divide between each comment. So that's why it's important to know that it's 3 returns here. Okay, so not save. We'll go back to After Effects. Actually, no, we're going to go to the Finder. So in the scripts folder, when you install scripts, there's 2 kinds of scripts. There's scripts that go in the Script UI Panels folder, and if we go here to After Effects scripts, we'll go and we'll look at 3D and the 3D text creator, which is what we're going to be using. Actually, no, random is one I wanted to actually show you guys. So the random layer shifter, the reason I want to show you is because this particular script exists in 2 versions. This version 1.0 I would install in the scripts folder, and if it says embeddable panel like this, or if it's ever mentioned that it should be in an embeddable panel, it gets installed in this folder, the Script UI Panels folder. So the first script that I'm using is this 3D text creator, and I've actually created a new version just for this tutorial, which I've uploaded to the site already, which is 3D text creator from File. So you double click on it and it opens it up in Extend Script Toolkit. So this might look intimidating at first, but as long as you just read the instructions, here it clearly says user variables at the top. And the first section that we're going to set is the range where we want the text distributed in. And this you can play back and forth, but I know that I want to distribute it from -5,000 this way, and then 10,000 back towards the back. And then set main color is what color do I want my text to be. So I want it to be sort of all hue variations of the AE Tuts logo. So if you go here, if you kind of hover it over here in the info palette, it tells you the colors. So it's 80, 48, and 90. Now the problem is that the scripts require colors to be entered in float. It says so right here. They need to be an RGBA float, which is why 100 and then the 4th number is the alpha, which is 1 being full. This would be the red because think of it as like 1 is like 100%. So 100% red, 0 for green, and then 0 for blue. But because most people are used to having numbers in 8-bit, see if you switch to 32-bit, which is basically considered float, and we look, you can see there that red is 0.3137. The way you get that number is if you look at a calculator and you do 80 divided by 255 colors, which is how many colors are in 8-bit, you get 0.3137, which is the float version of this color. What's cool about the script is that you can actually enter that math right in here. So instead of typing, which you could just say 0.3137, but instead you could do 80 divided by 255, and then the other colors, which are 48 and 90. So you could do 48 divided by 255, and then 90 divided by 255. And then you could do the same for alpha. You could do 255 divided by 255 to keep things consistent. And then here is basically how much variation you want, and the defaults work pretty good for this. If you set this to false, it won't set the color or the Q variation, but we want in this case. And in this case, the separator is what I had been mentioning earlier. We actually have 3 returns, so the return is indicated with, you see the little cheat sheet here, \n means return. In this case, we're going to have 3 returns, so I'm just going to do this 3 times. So that indicates 3 returns. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'm going to create, so I've already created a main comp. I made it 720p, which is 1280 by 720. I'm working at 23.976 frames per second. I've also already imported the music that I'm going to be using, which I got from Audio Jungle. I did a very simple edit so that the music would be shorter and it would actually crescendo in the places I wanted to. That can be covered, in another tutorial. And then just select this comp and kind of go here and run the script. I'm going to do 3D text creator from file. And so it asks me to open the text file. In this case, it's comments. And it automatically scans through it, and it tells you how many items you have. In this case, I have 135 items. And that's basically, dividing them up with those 3 returns. So you can actually enter more. I could go say 150, and that will just basically go through the 135 and then start over again at the beginning. To keep things light, I mean, when I did this for real, I had way more than 135 because I actually went into all of the comments and copied and pasted them. But for right now, we're just going to work with about 50 of them. And again, if you were doing this for real and you wanted to have the density that I had in the open, you would just do way more. But we're going to do 50 for now to keep things cool and breezy for this demo. So you can see here, the script now, it tells you up here what's still going. It's creating all the layers. And I mean, wow, that would have taken so much time. And boom, there you go. I mean, it's already looking pretty cool on its own. We want to go ahead and add a camera. Again, I like working with 50 millimeters. And one of the cool things about this script, by the way, is that it's not linking things up with expressions or setting keyframes or anything. It just sets the text. So if I go ahead and move the camera in, if you hold down the option key, by the way, you can make this work a lot faster by switching it to that wireframe. You can just grab a layer like this and just move it, and then boom, that's it. It's been rearranged. And so you can really design the way you want this to look. I can just grab the text layers however I want and just move them around like this. So what we're going to do is first we're going to create a little camera move. And if you look at the audio here, we're going to reveal the audio and we're going to listen to it. It basically starts with this light piano. And as you can see, I've already made a marker. Symbol comes in is when I basically started the camera pushing in. See that? And then I also had all of these other texts kind of reveal. So what I'm going to do is right before here, I'm going to move my camera back. Again, if you hold down the option key, you can sort of do this faster. So I'm going to move way back like this. Okay. If I look at the top here, zoom out, So you can see here how it's basically distributed all of these layers like so. And there's my camera. And the reason I want to actually start further back, I'm going to move a few of these forward sort of for added effect. And let's go ahead and zoom in. So I think we're a little bit too far back. Let's move in a little bit closer. Alright, that's looking still a little bit like right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to use these sort of text layers as our sort of beginning text layers that we're going to use. Alright. And so I'm going to set keyframes for position P and then Shift A, point of interest. Set my keyframes here sort of like a starting point. And then if you look here, the second part of the music, that's where the logo forms. And so this is where I want my camera to stop and find the logo. So essentially I'm just going to travel past all of this text all the way to the end. Let's take a look here. So that I've passed the last few pieces of text, and then boom, there. So you can see the last. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the logo here, but this essentially is my end keyframe. And then the other thing I did is at the beginning I actually kind of rotated this thing around a little bit so that there was a little bit of an angle and drama, and I think I was just a little bit closer and something like this. It might be a little too much rotation, I think. Alright, now I'm basically starting my camera move extremely slow. So if I do keyframe position easy ease out and I look at this in the graph editor, zoom in, I'm going to pull this out so that it basically just eases out and it just starts moving kind of slowly. And then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to have it come to a stop. So I'm going to ease in to a stop. So easy ease in, and then bring this back a little bit so that it's sort of like slow, and then it speeds up in the middle, and then it comes to a stop here. So let's preview this real quick. Okay, so I actually want the camera to start a little bit before that, so that kind of hints the viewer as the camera's starting to move. And then the other thing now we need to work on is getting this sort of type to reveal out. So here's this Morello the Great. He was actually the first commenter, so that's why I chose it to be the first comment. So again, you can actually position this stuff any way you want, which is really kind of cool. So I'm going to go ahead and take that Morello the Great one. If you hit X, it brings it to the top, and I'm going to go ahead and solo that. And move it a little bit closer. And what I did is I actually animated the text through a text animator. So the way you do that is you reveal the text controls like this, and then you say animate opacity. And the quickest, easiest way to do this is you just open the range selector and you just animate, well, you bring the opacity to 0 and you just animate the offset like so, right? But what I wanted to do is I wanted to be able to control this for all of the layers in an even manner. I wanted them all to reveal in the same exact pace. So the one expression that you can do is you can actually open an expression and you can just say time. And what this does is it just assigns whatever time. See, here's 9 and it does 9. And so as time progresses, it essentially, you know, animates out. But as you can see, it's a little bit too slow. So the way you speed that up is you just multiply it times something. In this case, 8 times 20. So now it actually types out much faster. See? But the best way to do it is to actually connect it to sort of a control layer. So I'm going to create a new null object. I'm going to put it at the bottom so I can have it close to my text layer here. And I'm going to rename it control. And on this control layer, I'm going to apply a slider control, and I'm going to call this speed. And then here I'm going to type 20. And the way I basically exchange those values, if you hit EE, you get your expression. And control. So I just highlight this 20, and all I have to do is pick whip it to this speed 20. So now essentially that's the same thing. And the reason I do that is because now I'll be able to control the speed for all the layers because they're all going to basically have the same expression at once. Now the only other problem with this is there's two problems. What I'm going to do is I'm going to offset these layers so that they all start at different points so they're staggered. But the problem with that is that time starts at 0, so when it gets here to the endpoint, it's kind of already in progress. And what I wanted to do is actually I wanted to start wherever the endpoint of that layer is. And the way I do that is I just have to subtract the endpoint time from the actual time. So I do that by doing a little parentheses, and then I say time minus endpoint, close parentheses, and then times the value. So now when I get to the beginning of the layer, it starts typing out, which is kind of nice. And the other problem is that right now this is set on a percentage. So it goes from 0 to 100%, which essentially, depending on the length of the layer, which they're all different lengths, that basically is going to vary the speed at which it types out. Now that could be cool, and you could totally try that, but I decided I wanted them all to sort of type out at an even speed. And the way I was able to do that was by, in the range selector, selecting the advanced controls, I switched it from percentage to index. And so now, instead of actually moving on percentage, it's moving sort of each one of these numbers is one of the characters. And so I wanted this basically, now it's moving through the characters at an even speed. So it doesn't matter how long or short this is actually going to move at an even pace. The only problem is that when you copy and paste, if I say copy this, and the way you do it is you copy the actual animator. If I copy this animator onto another layer, paste, and I say show this, notice that the it pasted the value of 77. This is not the correct value. This is not 77 characters. And so how can you make it so that it actually reads the value and sets the correct length? Well, you do that with another expression, and essentially you just open this expression. Well, hold on. We need to reveal the source text property. So you see source text, and essentially you just wanted to know the length of the source text. So I just go and I delete this, and I pick whip the source text, and I just say dot length. See, in this case, this is 35. Now, I actually want to be careful because now I'm modifying a separate text layer, but I just wanted to show you that because if you just copy and paste it, it pastes that value. So by putting another expression there, it dynamically fixes itself to get the correct length of that text. So I'm just going to copy that expression and put it on our sort of master per se. Okay. So in this case, it remains at 77. So now that I have this, and I can see this typing on, I can select the animator, and I'm going to save this as an animation preset. And I'm going to call it text reveal, which I've already done here, see? And so I'm going to save and replace. And let me delete this one here because I want to make sure that it applies a new one. I'm just going to select all my text layers and just say apply animation preset text reveal. I could have copied and pasted it, but this way I can just refer to that later. Now just be careful because that text preset actually refers to that control, this control layer. So whenever you use it in the future, make sure you create this control, layer first. So actually, if we bring this back to the beginning and we unsolo this, you can see that all of the there's another soloed layer. So you can see all of the text layers now are going to start typing out at the same time. Um, but we don't want that. What we want is to actually have them sort of stagger. So, and we want them to stagger as the camera pushes back in Z. And so what we need to do essentially is we need to sort the layers in C space. Well, we're going to do that with another script. So I'm going to select all my text layers, and I'm going to use Redefinery's kind of sort of script. And so here I'm going to basically work with the selected layers in the comp, and I want to order by layer Z position. So if we take a look at it from the top here, so you can see what's going to happen. You can see as I come down here, these layers are kind of all over. See how these two are in the middle, and then this one is in the front. I want them to be in the order of the timeline as they are here. So by selecting them here and then doing sort, I can just hit sort, and now see, now they're basically all sorted in Z space. And so as we kind of come to the towards the top, see, Morello is now the top one. So you can see how they're basically all going back, which is kind of cool, because now I can grab all these and use another script. This one is from Paul Tersley called Shift Layers, and I'm going to switch it to stagger selected layers, and I want it to do it from the original endpoint, and I'm going to stagger them about 10 frames each and apply. All right, so now as we go, as you can see here, it basically just staggered them so that as the camera goes back, you can see how they sort of start popping on. And because of the expression with the text, essentially, you know, once they approach the endpoint is when they start typing out. So you can see sort of now this sort of like staggered approach. But what we want to do is cheat a little bit, because I want to wait until this big crescendo to have most of them start. So I'm just going to kind of pick the first four. I'm going to remove those from my selection and then move all of these other guys here. And then I'm going to choose another script, and this one is from one of my scripts, the AE scripts. It's random layer shifter, okay? And then I'm going to choose -30, 30, and you're going to see here what that does is it basically, see, this is all really nice and even, but I want to kind of randomize it. So if I hit shift them, you can see how it actually does this like nice little jagged edge on the edge, so that as we go along, and we're going to have to work this, because so here, this is the second crescendo. So by the time it gets here, this should all be, so I'm going to actually, so what we're going to do is we're going to, and we'll massage it, but now you can actually just move these as groups. And then, you know, sort of slide things up a little bit. And like so. Alright. Alright, so what I did is I kind of cheated a little bit at the beginning, just for added dramatic effect. And then controlled the reveal of these. So let's start with the Morello. I actually animated the position so that it started sort of like over here. And then by the time it gets to the crescendo, or the first symbol, which is here, you know, we saw a little bit more of it, like the whole thing there. And then I shift F9 so that it eases into a stop. And I did the same thing with all of these. And I can actually, I actually offset these a little bit more by hand, so that they kind of happen one at a time. And again, I did the position for all of these. So this one, let's go like this, position, and then so back like that, shift F9, and then same with this one, position, that's pretty good there, and then kind of like that, and then this one here, position, actually move this one up a little bit like that, oops, and move this like this. And then you can do more than one at a time to do this. So if we preview this, let's go. Okay, so I think I started some of these a little bit too soon. So just move this back, and then I can also slow this type down a little bit. But you can start getting the idea of how I basically make this whole. You can also, I think some of these need to be moved up in Z, so just literally you can shift select layers here. Let's move these from the back. Just move them forward. And what's really great about the way the script works is you can just sort of really go in there and hand tweak each layer. So as you're going back, if it starts feeling, you know, like there's too many on top of each other, or not, you know, close enough, you can sort of space that out. See, like let's say I wanted to move this one up, just grab it like that, and then move this one over here so we can see it. So again, I actually did this with, you know, maybe 2-3 times this many layers, but obviously things start to slow down a bit, so I'm just doing this tutorial with 50 layers, which is why this looks a little bit more sparse than the actual final product. But as you can see here, as we kind of go along, you know, we start encountering the layers writing out again. So move that stuff. See, oops, you got to be careful not to scale. You can just grab, if you hold down the shift key again, it's a lot easier to move the layers. So just step into it a little bit. So as you can see here, the camera starts kind of getting ahead of itself, or of the typing out. So you can basically come back here and just slip the stuff forward, so that to make sure that stuff is already typed out. And again, make sure that this stuff is in. Make sure this stuff is in view. And if you know, in this case, for example, if I switch to the top view, I can see where my camera is. And there's just, you know, if I wanted to move a few layers, I could kind of grab these from here and then move them back here or whatnot. So again, you know, this is not going to be exactly a final sort of layout, but you can start getting the idea. And that the concept here is that as we kind of get to this crescendo, and that's when I knew that 10,000 was a good value, because that's how, when we get here to this point, we're going to be able to put our logo back here. So we kind of go through the very last few pieces of text. Oops. And I think these probably need to be a little bit closer. So by this point, see, when we're going to get to the second, I want this to be, so I can just move these forward and Z. See, so they're out of view. And like that. And you can also do this from the top view, probably a lot easier. So if I go here to the back, just make sure this stuff is. And these are probably down below, so if I zoom out in the front view. So some of these that are below, I can just move up so that it actually, they look more. A little trick, by the way, is if you hold down the caps locks, you can still move these guys and see them. See that? And kind of work in real time. I know this can be very tedious when you have a lot of 3D layers, so these kinds of little tips are really handy. So there we go. I just move all this stuff up into view. You don't want to get too crazy, because you want it to feel sort of spread out, but some of these are obviously out of range, so moving these in is helpful. Okay, so back to the active camera and back to the beginning. So here we go. So now that I move these up, I need to just tweak these a little bit. just move these back here. All right. Almost there. That one. And this one. All right. That should be that. That's it. All right. So now the other thing that we need to do is we want to add a sort of a depth fade, so that as we're going to, let's get it down, as they start appearing, they should also, like if they're sort of further away, they should also be kind of faded. So as they get closer to the camera, they should fade up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some more controls to our control layer here. And the first control I'm going to do, these are all expression controls, by the way. So slider control. I'm going to call this fade start. And this is the distance at which I want the fade to start. So basically if it's 0 or far away, at a certain distance I want it to start fading up to 0. And then the fade end is where it'll basically reach, 100% opacity. All right. And the way I'm going to do that, let's pick a random piece of text here. Let's say that one. Okay, so I'm going to solo this one. And because this one, and I'm going to move it just here so we can actually see what happens. As the camera starts pushing in, it basically gets closer. So I wanted to sort of from this point start automatically fading up from 0 to 100. And so the way I'm going to do that is first I need to measure the distance, and I'm going to do that by, so on the text layer I'm going to put a slider control, and this is just a temporary thing to help me with my expression. I'm going to rename this distance, and I'm going to put an expression on the actual distance slider, and this expression first needs to reference the camera. So I'm going to say cam equals, and I need to find the camera, which is here. So I'm going to move the camera up temporarily. Actually, I'm going to move both of these guys up so that it's easier to do this. All right. So I need to measure the camera position. So I'm going to reveal the camera position. So I'm going to just say cam, and I'm just going to pick whip the position. And essentially distance equals the length from the camera, comma, to the position of this layer. All right. So that's it, and that'll give us the distance. So as we basically travel, you can see here how the distance gets shorter and shorter and shorter. See? So it goes from like 5,000, and then when it gets very close, it goes to be like below 1,000. So this is handy because otherwise it'd be hard to measure depending on which lens you're using and all these things. So I like to put this sort of cheating expression on the text layer. So now I can take this expression and apply it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fade the text layer up. So I'm going to reveal opacity, and I'm going to put another expression on opacity, copy this. So now I have my distance, and then I just need to do a linear expression. So I'm going to say linear as the distance. This first I need to put in my two variables I created earlier. So first I want to do a fade start, and I just pick whip up here to fade start, and then fade end, and I pick whip up to fade end. So now I say as the distance goes from fade start to fade end, and because this is actually going in reverse, in other words, instead of going, and because the distance is actually going down, not going up, I'm actually going to reverse it. I want it to go from 100% opacity. In other words, as the it equates, because we're actually counting down. Normally you would put 0 to 100, but we're going to reverse that because we're actually going down. So we go from 100 to 0, and then what we need to do is just set these values according to these values. So like I said, I wanted to start sort of around here. So let's say 5500, and then at around, I don't know, here, maybe here, like say 1500, I wanted to, well, no, like 2000, I say. All right, so again, if I go to control, so when it goes from 5000 is where I want it to start fading up, to 2500 is when I want it to be fully opaque. So as you can see now, it fades up as it gets closer to camera. You could actually make this 1000, so it's a little more dramatic. So you see how now it fades up as it's coming towards camera. But I think 2000 is probably a better, no, 2500. Okay, now you don't need to copy the cheat, this distance thing. You don't need to copy it, so I can actually just delete that. The one you just need to copy is this opacity. There's one other control I'm gonna do, and this is just in case I don't want it to be 0. I'm gonna duplicate this, and I'm gonna call this minimum opacity. And let's say I wanted that to be 5%. So, oops. So instead of 0, I actually just pick whip this value. So I can then control that later if I want. It's sort of like a little bit of insurance policy depending on how things look at the end. So now I can just, you can basically copy this I bar and then copy. You can also copy expression only, but in this case it makes no difference. And then select, now I can actually move these back down. Select all of the text layers. I'm actually going to exclude the 4 special ones at the top, and I'm going to go ahead and paste. And I can also move control, and it can go down. And this special one, I can unsolo it, and I can just move it back to where it was. So now when these all appear, the ones that are in the back are going to be fading up. So it's like a nice little detail, sort of like a depth fade. And because I've tied them all up to control, if you wanted to change this, you know, values or whatever, you could do that without a problem. All right, so let's actually take a look at this here. So yeah, it also helps to just sort of check them in little batches so that everything renders a lot faster. So for example, instead of having them fade up from so far back, I could switch this to sort of 4000. So there you go. Some of them are kind of faded out. Although 5000 was probably a good value. Because I wanted to sort of feel like there's a whole bunch of them that appear when the crescendo happens here. So let's unsolo these so we can see if that's the case. So here we go. We want to have some more view. So let's just scooch some of these up. And you can massage this, as you can see, just kind of moving layers around how you need. You can move a whole bunch of group of them around. All right, so again, you can just move this stuff around so that as you're kind of coming along, you sort of encounter. In this case, you know, if you want stuff typing out, you can just slide them back out. You can just pick it literally. So let's say, and then if you hit the X, it'll bring it to the top. So if I wanted to that one to start typing out when I was getting to it, just slide it back like this. And that's how I did it. I just had some that were already there and then some that were typing out as I was going along. All right, so then when we get to the end, we're going to basically reveal the logo. And so looks like I need to move this one back. All right. Actually, before I do that, let's move all of the text layers into their own pre-comp. So I'm going to select them all, and I'm also going to take the camera in the control layer because The expressions refer to both of these, so you need to make sure you include those when you pre-comp and pre-compose. And I'm going to call this type pre-comp. And the reason I'm doing this is to keep the stuff uncluttered, and also because I can also control the glow and luminance values and all those things for all the type at once, which we're going to do later. So now that that's there, I'm going to actually take the camera and I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it back into the main comp. So now we have the same camera in both the main comp and the pre-comp. So there we can see our text. So we'll go ahead and wrap up part 1 of the tutorial here. In part 2, we'll bring in the logo and do all that animation, as well as doing all of the finishing of the spot.